This is Python's Paradise. This is your host, Greg Gilbert, straight out of Fredericton, New Brunswick, Canada, but boasting a beautiful Toronto background behind me within this November the 23rd, 2025. And folks, we're almost a month away from Christmas. Yes, a month and 2 days, and we gotta get into the Christmas films. I have kind of a rule I like to do the last few years. Um, I never watch Christmas movies on Christmas Day. I like to go right up to the 24th,
Hmm.
do the 12 days of Christmas. But since 24 days before Christmas in December, I could do the 12 days of non-horror Christmas horror films and the 12 days of Christmas horror films because I like both. And one of those movies I happen to enjoy watching at Christmas time as a film that's not even 10 years old yet, but it was a wonderful discovery. A film called Better Watch Out. Yes. And folks, I have the director of that film on the show with me tonight to celebrate. Folks, I give you the awesome Chris Peckover. How do you do, Chris?
I'm very well. Thank you for having me on.
I'm honored to have you on. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes, and I see that nice framed poster behind you. Yes. Yeah, this was a film that I kind of discovered. I think it was in one of the horror film magazines, because I find it funny. I hear so many people, they're like, it's Halloween all year round, Halloween all year round, Halloween this, Halloween that. And when Halloween's over, they're like, oh, and they're complaining because Christmas lights are going up while Halloween's going on. And I'm like, folks, calm down, calm down. Do you know how many Christmas horror films are out there?
I
There's
think
a
it's the more interesting juxtaposition because Halloween, you're expecting
Mhm.
spooky and so on. Christmas is all about joy, everyone getting along together, family uniting, hopes, presents, and so on. And so it's a juicier backdrop for horror to then happen.
Well, I got like Christmas classics I play every year here, and I like to just lay on my bed with my cat and watch them. And then there's the Christmas horror films, like the original Black Christmas, Silent Night, Deadly Night, which usually watch the first two because you got to have Garbage Day in there as well. you know. Christmas Evil, I like to watch Gremlins, and I could go on with a host of other Christmas horror films. And over the last few years, I've added a few to my list, like Krampus, which I saw in theaters, and Secret Santa, such a bizarre Christmas comedy horror slasher by Adam Marcus, and Better Watch Out is another one I add to that list, which was a film that completely took me by surprise when I watched it because I love the fact that the trailer did not give away uh, stuff that goes on in it. But before we get talking about Better Watch Out, I would like to get a little bit of your background. What got you into the business?
I was pre-med in college for the first 2 years, and I just there was a class where I started realizing, oh, this is just rote memorized. Like just pre-med is just memorizing thousands of functions and words, and I was like, I don't have a good memory, so I kind of had a bit of an existential crisis, and was talking to a mentor of mine and he was a philosophy student, and he asked maybe the most important question I've ever heard. He said, if money didn't matter, what would you do? And I was like, I'd be a surgeon, like I was planning to. And then I was like, wait, I come from like uh, a financially unstable family where like I was just always afraid that we would have nothing one day. And so I think part of me wanting to be a doctor was that financial security, right? I was like, I really thought about it. I was like, if money didn't matter, God, I love movies. I wish I could, I don't know, do that. And he said, listen, you're going to a school where you're never going to starve. Right? I went to an Ivy League. You're never going to starve. And so assuming that we don't get reincarnated, if this is like your one life to live, why not live it doing the thing that you love? And I soaked that in for a couple weeks and then completely switched majors and never looked back.
Well, it says that you were studying psychology, according to Wikipedia. Now,
Oh,
you
funny.
correct me if I'm wrong, because I was going to say, did that play into anything to go on with Better Watch Out? Because there's kind of like it's almost like a blend there.
Oh, of just psychology?
Psychology versus the mental stability going on, and
So th this will get even more fun. I don't know if I've told anyone this before. I was majoring in psychology, but the plan was to become a brain surgeon. Like I really wanted to do brain surgery,
good
and
luck with
so
that with our politicians.
huh, weirdly, I feel like I still am doing brain surgery, where you know you're watching a movie. My hope is you're there's enough at first that feels familiar where you're like, I know where this is going. And when the audience feels comfortable, they're like, "Oh, I've seen this before. I know where this is going." That's when you can pull the rug out from under them. And it's really about like controlling emotions. A really great director can predict exactly how you're feeling at any time, and that's how you get to subvert. That's how you get to to shock, to uh, you know, jokes are that. It's all about feeling like you know where you're going and then taking a sharp turn.
That happens numerous times. You better watch out, let me tell you. Um, it's funny. You're listed in any time if there's something because Wikipedia doesn't always get it wrong. But I found it interesting. It lists you as Australian Canadian,
Yeah,
but you
I'm
live in the
a Aussie
States.
citizen and Canadian citizen.
You live in the States, so it's
We moved to the smallest county in Texas when I was 8 years old. I used to live in Montreal, so
uh-huh.
it was a bit of a culture shock.
Hmm. Kitty, look who wants to join us. Better watch out. It's a Skittles.
Hmm.
Skittles, are you going to join us on the Zoom? Huh? You have a kitty?
No, I used to have a dog who passed away in 2019, and it was like so tough. I'm like I'm gonna
I
wait a little bit
bet.
longer before getting another dog or cat.
I bet you that is hard. I've had mine for about 15 years now, He's a rescue, so
Yeah.
yeah. So when he comes over during my Zoom interviews, I gotta stick him on camera.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
They're your baby.
Yeah. Well, looking at your I noticed that you've got a couple films here, and then now this one here I haven't seen, but I do want to talk about it. Undocumented. Now you got Peter
Mm.
Stormare in that. Now is that's your first feature? Am I right in
Yeah.
saying
Yeah, I was 27 when I made that.
that? Okay. Yep. You see, this I haven't seen, but talk
S-
about going into making your first feature.
I mean, yeah, so Undocumented kind of came from me growing up in Texas and how do I put it? When I came up with the idea for Undocumented, it was kind of like the crazy anti-immigration policies had not quite started yet, but I could sense that they were broiling.
Hmm.
And a lot of the bad guys in the movie, I called them my backyard villains because I would just be in someone's cookout or something, and you just casually hear conversations between two white dudes, and I just remember thinking, I'm white, but I was a foreigner and felt very foreign as a Canadian in Canada. And so I've always kind of like known what it feels like to be an outsider. I just remember thinking my face would melt. I'd be like, I can't believe it, people are saying this so casually and openly. And then the thing that really made me want to do the movie is right out of USC Film School, I worked at Google for a year.
Hmm.
And it was right when they had acquired YouTube. And my primary job was not this, but the person next to me was. His job was basically to watch anything that was flagged for violence or
Hmm.
sexuality. I feel like I remember they actually caught a pedophile based on my friend like just going through. So he would show me all basically he'd be like, these are gonna get pulled down soon. Watch these videos. Here's the violent ones. Here's the nudity ones. Here's the ones that are inappropriate and so on. And there was one video I saw once, and have you ever heard of the Minuteman organization?
What is it?
The Minuteman organization.
No.
So the Minuteman organization was started by a guy named I forget his first. I want to say his first name was Greg Gilchrist. It was like close to your name. It might not be Greg though. Something Gilchrist, and he basically organizes all these retired, you know, overweight white dudes who patrol the border, even though they're not ICE, they're not hired by the government. They're just kind of like, I'm retired and I want to protect my country. And so they just drive up and down the border and catch anyone they can. And this was a video that I can't say it was a Minuteman or two, but I feel like it was. They had attached a camera to the side of a rifle through the scope, so you're seeing through the scope, and you could see the video as it was pointed towards the Mexican side, and there was a man crossing just nothing like desert, and they started shooting at him, and the man ducks behind this plastic blue water barrel, and you hear this voice going like, "Dang, you missed him!" And I just remember thinking like, oh, things are getting so it's like openly okay. This person uploaded this onto YouTube, and so I just felt like I needed to say something. With so Undocumented is a found footage movie about a group of illegal immigrants who crossed the border with a student film crew from UT, and the film crew is trying to show like here's what their lives are like, here's what their hopes and dreams are. They're kind of following across the border with them, and the story is about how they all get into a U-Haul to get driven to a safe house, and the U-Haul gets hijacked mid-drive and driven out into the middle of the desert to a compound where they're very surprised to find a film crew in there with them, and these Minutemen basically say, we're sorry that you're in this situation. We will let you go, but before we do, we've decided that we want you to film what we do here so we can send the tapes back to Mexico to make sure no one else wants to cross again. And it was dark and I was about to say timely, but I feel like it came out like 7 years too soon because when 2016 rolled around, I remember just getting like hundreds of messages from people being like, "You should re-release your movie." We I'm not proud of this, but like we predicted separating, parents from their children. That's in the movie. Putting them in cages. It just, for us, we came up with the ideas being basically like, what is the most dehumanizing way you could treat these people? And that is exactly what the Trump administration did. So, yeah, it's more chilling in hindsight than when it came out in 2010.
What was it like working with Peter Stormare? Talk about bringing him into this, because I mean, he was in Fargo and movies like that.
I I did something. Filmmakers should not do this, but for some reason it worked for me. I had a friend who was Peter Stormare's realtor, and he gave me his address, and I just slipped my script with a note into his mailbox.
Okay.
Semi creepy, but I was like, I really feel like you. And like I got a call within 24 hours and he was like, I'm a first generation American. While I would never go as extreme as these people, I do believe that anyone who skips the due process, is bad. And so I kind of weirdly feel like I should play this role.
He didn't put
And
you in a wood chipper?
no, Peter Stormare is he's a force of nature. I call him like an actor's actor because he would keep
Mhm.
everyone on their toes in every take. He would never do the same thing twice, which was a nightmare for editing. But once we found it, just so great. There were a lot of intense scenes in that movie, and a lot of the younger actors would get just kind of numb after a while, and he would find ways to like keep them fresh and jolt them out of their numbness. And I just it was like having a second director on set.
There you go.
Yeah.
Well, you followed that up with Better Watch Out, and what a wonderful discovery it was. Especially, I love watching a movie that completely sidelines my expectations because I love the fact that the trailer doesn't give anything away. And even though this movie is almost 10 years old, I'm not going to give anything away either, you know? I'll keep that secret, but I gotta say, I enjoyed what this movie did. How does it feel having a movie that has wasn't exactly a wide release, but has kind of caught on to uh, landing on people's top 10 horror lists on these Watch Mojos and all this every year, and people talking about it. It must feel good to have a film that is in the conversation.
It is surreal. We had a nothing release. I want to say we went into a couple screens for one weekend and then that was over. But somehow it's kind of just stayed.
Hmm.
And around this time every year I get flooded with, like we shot this in 2016 and in February it'll have been 10 years since we shot this and I'm very touched by the fact that how do I put it? I guess it's not going away as quickly as I thought it would.
Well, you know what? I really enjoy the film. Where did the idea of the film originate?
So I can't take credit for that. If you see in the credits, it's written by me and a guy named Zach Kahn. This
Okay.
script was originally brought to me by the producers, and it was entirely written by Zach. A big lesson I learned from Undocumented, because you haven't seen it yet, but it's much more intense than Better Watch Out. Like
Oh, wow.
I learned to like give a roller coaster of ups and downs. Undocumented is it's almost like a horror version of Requiem for a Dream, where it's like it's not a
Oh, I
roller
love
coaster. It's
that.
it's just a it's just a hopeless descent. And I just learned from that. Some people like I love those types of movies, and it's kind of like it's rare and it's just intense, and you feel like you've had a meal. But I also learned that like 80% of horror people when they watch a movie like that. They're, like we would do test screenings and I'd have friends like come out and be like, good job. And I could tell they hadn't enjoyed it. It had just been, it was just, it's like what happened to the younger actors where they just kind of numbed over a little bit. So, the original version of Better Watch Out was way more hopeless. And, uh, there's a female main character who I'm not going to say the script was misogynistic, but it was certainly not making her particularly bright or capable. And so I told the producers, I was like, listen, this is like $1 million twist. I love this. I don't know if I can make another movie like this. I kind of need to do something a little more mainstream. And they're like, well, what would that look like? And I said, well, again, I don't want to give away too much about the movie, but I was like, this is about a girl who's tied up and gagged for a lot of the movie. I was like, is there a way to do a movie where a girl is tied up and gagged and yet it's still feminist? And I came up with some rules. I was like, okay, she can never beg or cry. She always has to be either head to head with him or one step ahead. And I just created these little tenets, and I was like, if we can do a story where it's but by the end of the original script, her like eyeball was hanging out of her face, and she just melted her arms to on an oven to like undo the bindings on her wrists and so on. And it was just it was almost like Hostile. And
Yeah, we don't want you to go there.
right, I mean, listen again, like Hostel has its audience.
Yeah,
I had already experienced. I'd done one movie that was pretty grisly like that, and
yeah.
I just I felt like there was another route to take. So I pitched, like let's make this feel like the R-rated Home Alone. Let's
Mhm.
bring humor to it. We added Luke's friend Garrett to the story. The twist used to happen at page 60, and then the last 20 minutes was her tied up and things just going really awfully. I moved the twist. I don't want to say where, again, because
Mhm.
some of your audience haven't heard it, but I moved it a little earlier. So what happens after the twist to me was the more interesting part, and that's what really got fleshed out, and it was fun. So this did not originate for me, but the kind of like humor and I don't know how else to put it. Yeah, I just kind of added a little bit of me. Is maybe the best way I can put it.
I'm
And of
glad you
course,
did.
Zach was absolutely like I didn't want to do this without his blessing, so I had coffee with him, and I was like, "Listen, the producers have asked me to do this take. I don't want to do this if you're not okay with it." And I kind of spelled it out for him, and he was so generous and so awesome. And he was like, "This is I love this. Do it. Do what you need to do to get this made. You have my full support." So I've always been very thankful to him.
Does he like the final product?
I hope so. He's told me he has.
I certainly do, you know. I gotta say, you mentioned Hostel. Here's where I come with horror films. I I like to experience horror films like a fun house, you know? Like I was just in Toronto for Frightmare in the Falls, and I stayed a week in their vacation, you know, and there's a theater that was screening the original Halloween, you know. I went and saw it twice in Toronto on the big screen. There's a reason I'll go see Halloween. It's spooky, it's scary, but it's a funhouse kind of
Yeah.
scary. It's a roller coaster kind of scary. I don't have fun at Hostel or Saw or even Last House on the Left. And those films are well made. I'm not going to
Yeah.
knock them. You know, they're not shit like Pearl Harbor or
Right.
shit like the 2019 Black Christmas, you know.
Right.
You know, I love the original Black Christmas though, but the 2019 one,
But these movies you're listing, they're all that thing where you go, good job. Like it was well
yeah,
made. I just, it didn't feel like, you know, I have this feeling it's not just horror, it's every genre. I want my movies to be a nine-course meal. I want to
yeah,
feel fun, horror, pathos, like I want to be engaged by the character. I just want, I feel like there's so many different sides to what horror can do. And for a while, I almost didn't do horror because I was making my decision in the early 2000s, right when like, I don't know, like, I don't want to put down any movies, but there was like a breed of horror movies that started coming out where I call them jump scare salad, where it's like just the
yeah.
whole thing would just be like jump scare. And you're just kind of like, I would be covering my eyes because I'm like, I just know you're just going to keep jolting me. And it just felt very one note. Meanwhile, like one of my favorite horror movies is Toby Hooper's Poltergeist.
Good
And
choice.
that's got everything. It's got body horror. It's got jump scares with the coffins and the skeletons coming out. It's got insane creature design. It's the movie that made me afraid of clowns. It's also got like awe of the unknown. This kind of like there's something greater than us beyond the threshold, and it kind of hits every flavor of horror I can think of.
Hmm.
So that's probably where I'm going to stick for a while because I feel like audiences want a full meal and they don't get them very often.
I find
Weapons
too,
was a full meal.
I enjoyed Weapons.
Yeah.
I also enjoyed Barbarian, his as first movie, and I actually
Yeah.
interviewed the guy who was the Barbarian.
No fun.
Yeah, that was somebody done up in makeup. So it wasn't even a female.
Right. No.
I had that guy on, and I met Richard Brake at Frightmare in the Falls, and I got talking to him about that, and but no, you're right. I find it when horror movies, when I sense that they're trying to gross me out, that's when I start to pull back. There are times I deal with it. Like there's some of the Giallo films, like New York Ripper, for example, is a hard movie to watch, but I have it here on Blu-ray because I like the look of the film
It's
and
artful. Yeah, 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 yeah.
yeah, but I hate the eye penetration and stuff like that. And I'm like, do you have to show that? Like, do you need to? Now, there's certain stuff that you can
I
show,
think
like
you can sometimes.
yeah.
Guillermo del Toro, it's funny, he gives a ratio that I found I naturally did anyways. Like I read this post, Better Watch Out, but if you look at Better Watch Out, it's exactly what he's talking about. He says, obviously better than CGI, better than any practical effects are our imagination, right?
Hmm.
So he was like, you don't always want to show the thing. Sometimes it's better to not show it. And he said, but meanwhile, the audience needs their prime pumped. So his rule is show it a third of the time,
Hmm.
and then the other two-thirds of the time don't show it. So a lot of people, there's I don't want to give this away. The scene that I get told about the most from Better Watch Out involves recreating a setup from Home Alone.
Oh, I know what you're talking about.
And a lot of people were like, oh my God, when the thing happened, it was so gory, and I just couldn't believe you'd shot that. And I was like, there was no,
But the
we
thing
didn't
is,
show
it's
it.
all in editing. You don't like it's like what Hitchcock did in Psycho. You
Yep.
never see the knife penetrate.
Yep. You
And I
never
mean,
see the impact, and yet
yeah.
everyone remembers seeing the impact because when you've primed their pump, their imagination will do a $200 million worth of CGI for you.
So you did it right. Dario Argento I really like too. He's another one that goes right up to that line. But I mean, I remember like we mentioned, like Hostel and Human Centipede and ones like that. I find very difficult to get through. But at the same token, I mean, like I'll give credit, like where credit due. If something is well acted and well done, I'll give the film its dues. Like like there's nothing that somebody could do to get me to watch Pearl Harbor again. That has nothing to do with gore. It's just a shitty movie. But better watch out. That I love it when I watch a movie and I'm just, oh my goodness, I didn't see this coming. This is interesting. And it kind of I'm 53 right now, but I remember, of course, I got two brothers. I'm the middle kid. But my brothers and I were babysat when we were young, and we used to drive our babysitters up the friggin' wall. We were so bad. And but I remember and I thought about this when I watched this movie, actually. I think the one of the first babysitters we had, in many ways, kind of reminded me of Olivia in this movie. You know, a stunning blonde, um, uh, either in her final year of high school or entering college. I remember she was doing the paper route at the time. Um, but it's interesting because uh, you hear stories about this. I never had stories about this because I was too young to even think about anything sexual, you know. Back in those days, you know, it was all about Star Wars. We didn't care. We weren't looking at our babysitters, other than to piss them off. But we had one male babysitter. We always behaved with him.
Yeah.
And I find it funny looking back. It's like we always pissed off the female babysitters. It's like, were we sexist little bastards growing up or what?
Something that Zach did really interestingly in the original script that I absolutely like didn't change much of was that setup of like a 12-year-old boy being in love with his babysitter. And it just reminded me so much of John Hughes movies from the 80s, kind of like those really relatable teenage feelings.
Hmm.
But also, if you notice, a lot of John Hughes movies, like you watch now and you're like, ooh, this did not age well. Like Long Duck, just kind of like just things very
I
much of the
Unlocked
time,
16 Candles is my
right?
favorite John Hughes movie.
So I thought the introduction was really interesting because like 12-year-old boys, being in love with their babysitter, wanting to kiss them, wanting to make out with them or win them over or something. I feel like that's gone through every boy's head at once they're at a certain age. But the type, the horror to me of it is like, okay, let's let this movie actually follow through and be like, what kind of person would it take to actually try to act on those feelings?
Yeah.
And you know,
I gotta say, you did well. You got the two kids from The Visit in this, which was interesting. You know, I
that's
gotta
so
say,
strange to me because
yeah.
we made the movie in Australia
Hmm.
and I was casting Australian kids, and they were two of the best teenage actors in Australia. And so to me, it's not weird that I cast both of them. It's weird to me that M. Night Shyamalan cast two Australian kids to play brother and sister in Pennsylvania. That's the weirder one to me. So I'm, hats off to him because he was right. They were
Hmm.
both fantastic actors, and they had so much fun like working together again. It was also fun watching them bring Levi into the fold.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah. I gotta say, uh Olivia, is her last name pronounced De Jong?
it's De Jong.
DeYoung.
Yeah.
Okay. You see, I've never saw that last name before, so the L is silent.
Well, the J is silent.
Oh, J is silent.
Yeah.
What was I thinking of? Maybe it's when you mentioned Long Duck Dong. Maybe I had
Oh,
that in
funny.
my
Yeah, yeah,
head.
yeah.
I don't know. I gotta say, I never really noticed her in The Visit. I mean, you notice her, but you notice her, but maybe it's because she's being fixated on in this movie. It's like, oh my goodness, she is drop dead stunning gorgeous, you
Yeah.
know, but in a very down to earth kind of way, you know.
She
She's
was
very,
rolling her eyes at me because she was 17 when we shot the movie, and I just remember thinking like, oh my God, like I'm really sexualizing you. I was like, this is just I like had to sit down with her. I was like, listen, you're doing a great job. We kept it very naturalistic with her, but I was warning her. I was like, you have just hit the age. I was like, you're gorgeous. And you're hitting the age where like you're gonna have choices ahead of you, like what films you do and what you don't, and what scenes you do and what you don't. I was just like, just surround yourself with people that you trust and protect yourself because I think she's stunning and a really talented actress. And I was kind of being Uncle Chris, and she was like, "Okay, Chris, thanks." But you know, that was certainly something I was aware of while shooting. I was like, "Oh, this is your first movie where you're like you're a woman." And she's very egoless and like you said, just like very very natural in performance. So to her it was nothing, but to me I was like, "Oh, what am I unleashing with her?"
I saw an interview with her. I think it might be on this disc, but she brought up something I never thought about before. And you touched upon it earlier when you were talking about the presentation of this movie. She's bound and gagged in a lot of this movie, and I found it interesting because it reminded me of two other movies. One that came after this one, actually. One that came before. The one that came before was Single White Female. And there's a long portion in Single White Female where Bridget Fonda is taped to a chair and she has tape over her mouth. And Bridget Fonda was talking about how she had to do a lot of acting just using her eyes and whatnot, you know. And she pulled that off because that's quite a long stretch for her. It was
Yeah.
suspenseful, you know, especially a scene where she's got a knife just pressing against her throat, and she has to think on the spot, how do I deal with this, you know? And it was very suspenseful. The one that came after this, I only saw the clip of this recently, and I thought it was hilarious. And I think I love Happy Death Day. And I love the follow-up, Freaky. And there's a scene in Freaky. Of course, you know the story of Freaky, where Vince Vaughn plays a serial killer whose body ends up swapping with Catherine Newton. And they Catherine Newton's so good in this movie, and so is Vince Vaughn, but they got Catherine Newton, who of course got the serial killer in her body. They got her tied to a chair and they have a sock stuffed in her mouth and a big wide strip of tape over her mouth. And there's a scene in it. I thought this was so great. Um, because the kid that's got her, or the guy, I should not kid, but teenager, whatever's got her tied up, knowing it's the possessed killer inside her, he's gay. So the mother comes in, and his mother comes in, and she's like shocked by what he says. He says, "Oh, this is we're doing role play." And you got this double take by Catherine Newton, like, huh? And her his mom's not buying it. He says, you're he tries to tell his mom that he's straight, and his mom's not buying it.
Oh,
And you
funny.
see
Yeah.
Catherine Newton there. She's gagged, but she kind of like laughing and mocking at him because, like, yeah, like you're pulling this off. If you haven't seen Freaky, check it out. It's pretty funny. When she does get free, or he inside of her gets free, there's a great reference to The Shining in it. You know, where Jack Nicholson is pressing against the door, you know? She's still got the tape over her mouth, but she's going like this and same look in her eyes, you know? Um, yeah. But again, there was another, you know, what's weird because we'll bookmark that because it's weird because growing up, you see somebody in a movie getting tied up, it's a plot device. It's a hostage thing, or it's something to add suspense. You know, you used to see it in Westerns growing up, or in Dukes of Hazzard, or whatever. We used to see it all the time. We thought nothing of it. It's so sexualized now. It's unreal, you know. Actually, pretty much everything today is sexualized, you know. Like I find it funny, you know, growing up. I never thought that My Little Pony would be what it is today, but I was born in the 70s, so I mean, but it's strange to me how a plot device that was used as a plot device for suspense is sexualized now so strong.
Mm.
Um, and now you hear uh, stories about people and their babysitters and this and that, and it's awkward, but I don't know whether something I didn't get triggered by this when I was young. I didn't get into girls until I was in high school. You know, like I never thought because I grew up on Star Wars, Masters of the Universe, Thundercats. I was into that kind of stuff, guy stuff, you know. And so I never got interested in girls until like high school, until I noticed them. And so I was never turned into that way, and maybe that's why I'm still single today. Maybe it's because I just prefer my independence, you know. But got a cat though. Kitty doesn't argue with me though. Just give him treats.
Mm.
Yeah, treats don't work on women though. Just on the cat.
Mm.
But nonetheless, it's weird how that plot device got twisted around. But you mentioned earlier her being tied to the chair, and I thought about those two other scenes because when you can't speak, and this can have backfire.
Olivia's such an insanely good actor that she was able to, I mean, like you always know exactly what she's thinking
Hmm.
just from her
Well,
eyes, and that's not easy.
well, Eddie Murphy did a film called A Thousand Words, and one of the big criticisms of that movie was this is an actor who's become famous for his wit and his voice. And when you got a plot device where every time a leaf drops from this tree, he's only got so many words left, it really takes away from the magic of Eddie Murphy. And I thought he was okay in it, but I get their point, you know? There was an example where somebody wasn't tied up, but the voice thing didn't work, you know? But I found it interesting when you brought that up because she spends a lot of time in that predicament, and her reactions were absolutely priceless.
Yeah,
You know,
she's got it all. She's got, I mean, so do Levi and Ed. I was very lucky. I finished that movie and I was like, there's five characters who are all, I want to say Dacre was like in his early 20s, but it was all like 21 and under. And I kept telling people, I was like, I cast the five best like young actors in Australia all in the same movie. And it was lucky, but a lot of people are like, how did you get that performance out of Levi Miller? And I was like, I wish I could say I did a lot, but I was really just kind of like doing gentle guiding. He brought so much of that himself.
another thing too reminded me of another movie. Um, was when he's got her tied to the chair and he takes the lipstick and draws the lip thing on her tape. That happened, I believe. No, no, not quite like this. Something similar in Charlie's Angels with Drew Barrymore.
Oh,
I
I've never
don't know
seen
if
it.
you've. Okay, she's tied to a chair and she's got tape over her mouth. I don't know whether the villain kisses her tape. I've only seen it once, but puts a red lipstick imprint on her tape,
Got it.
Drew Barrymore. And anyway, so that was something that happened in this that took me back. I watch a lot of movies, so I pick up on this stuff,
Mm,
but I thought Olivia was very down to earth coming off in this movie.
mm.
She never struck me at all as weak. I like somebody who is in a situation where they're isolated, whether it be physically or whether it be within where they are. In this case, a
Despite the fact
house.
that she's tied up, she is constantly outsmarting him or getting ahead of him in some way or dividing him and his best friend. And I think that's the only way that you can sit through this movie and be able to laugh at what is otherwise a fairly icky situation. Is having a really strong main character dealing with it. So
I did laugh whenever he's going through her handbag though, and the looks on her face, and she's
yeah,
got like this look of frustration, you know.
yeah,
Um, the way she moves her mouth when the tape is over it, like like she's trying to say, you know, get the fuck out of my bag, you know.
yeah.
Um, but yeah, she was fantastic in this, and a great lead for this movie. And it does tap into. I was never in love with my babysitters, but nonetheless, we used to throw Star Wars figures down the hallway and piss our babysitters off, and then we blame it on the action figures. If you could see how immature we weren't thinking about whether our babysitters were hot or not.
Right.
Yeah.
You
But
know, that touches on something that definitely went into the writing of this movie, which is, you know, compared to the 70s, the 80s, even the 90s, I feel like teenagers and tweens, they're so much smarter than they were 20 years ago. They have the internet, they can literally check anything. But that also means there's a bigger gap between how smart they think they are emotionally versus how smart they actually are emotionally. And that was kind of the playground I wanted to play in with this movie. We've got two 12-year-old boys who feel like they can do anything, and a lot of the mistakes they make are from that gap, where they think they're smarter than they are.
Mhm. There was a scene too, and I thought it was great the way you shot it because I can think of lesser filmmakers who would have went the exploitation route. I like the way you protected Olivia here because there's a scene where, you know, uh, somebody is dared to touch her breasts. And I like how it's alluded to, but you don't show anything. And I thought that was I thought you were how I read that in is you're being protective.
Oh yeah, it's one of those things where it's such an awful, like your brain is already doing all the work for you. So I was like,
Hmm.
why show it when that's one of those two-thirds examples where it's like I didn't need to show anything. So
Yeah. Did she ever talk to you about anything that she was going to do? Because she's in an immobilizing state. How she was going to go about any of this, or did this just come off improvising
well,
totally?
we rehearsed a lot of the scenes,
Hmm.
and you know, she's naturally, there's some actors who act up here only,
Hmm.
and you'll notice there's some actors who all of their acting is their mouth, where actually it's kind of blank up here, and then you have the very rare actor who has both, and she's one who has both. So, like I think it's very easy to over explain things to actors. I think you've spent months hiring the right ones, trust them, and just give little guides. So I don't think I gave her that much direction about how to act with just her eyes or how to react. She's just so naturalistic. Another thing is Levi's character is bigger than life, right?
Hmm.
He's almost like cartoonish. And the reason the movie gets away with that is because Olivia and Ed's characters are so much more grounded that it feels like you're just dealing with this bigger than life. Again, I don't want to give anything away, but situation.
Hmm.
And that's also where some of the comedy comes from. So Yeah, she and Ed brought such a grounded kind of like heart to the movie that it needed to go to the places that it does.
Now, I don't know how much of this is real and how much is done. I don't know how much of this was any of this was done on computer or anything like that, but there is a scene involving her and a spider.
Oh, that was all real.
Oh, was it? Oh, how
In
okay.
fact, the plan was to, so there's a scene where she has spiders all over her face and body, and we were so far behind budget. So we had planned on finding a warehouse that we were going to convert into a sound stage because we couldn't afford an actual sound stage. We filmed this in Sydney, and it ends up the reason there's no other sound stages besides the what was the Fox studio lot. Now I think Disney owns it.
Hmm.
The flight paths in the sky just there was constant air traffic going by, and it was too loud to film. And the one place where that doesn't happen is where those eight stages are. So we were forced to rent a stage on the Fox lot. Seven of those stages at the time were rented by Mel Gibson's movie Hacksaw Ridge. And there was
Okay.
one that had not been rented, and it was the biggest one. And in fact, it was held over for Alien Covenant, but the movie had been pushed, and so it was just sitting there under their name. And we pulled some strings and asked some favors, and they were like, "You have 60 days, including building your sets. Like we will give you a 60-day window, but you have to be out by this date." So we were so far behind the budget before we even started shooting that and it was summer in Sydney, and it was reaching 40 degrees Celsius, which is like, oh God, I forget the number. It was like over 100 degrees inside some days, and we could only afford 2 hours of air conditioning a day. So just we were so far behind budget, and I got told by the producers about a third of the way through the shoot, they were like, we can't we need to cut that attic scene with the spiders. And I was like, no, it's an important scene because I need for there to be a reason why a 17-year-old girl would let go of control and temporarily be kind of disabled so that a
True.
12-year-old could that, right? I was like, I don't know how else, like no senior in high school would ever like let a 12-year-old lead the charge for any moment because she's too responsible. And I needed something horrific to happen to her. So I was sitting on the curb outside, and Olivia sat down beside me, and I had my hand, I had my hands, and she said, "What's the matter?" And I was like, "I don't know what to do. This scene, I know it sounds stupid, but like I really need spiders to be on your face. That's like just a natural way to like just absolutely throw you off your." And she was like, "Well, you know that I'm afraid of spiders." I said, "Yeah." And she said, "If you need me to do it with real ones, I will." And I was like, I don't know if you remember her position. She's hanging upside down, like
Yeah. Yeah.
halfway
Oh,
out of
yeah.
a, and so we did some research, and there's these big motherfucker spiders in Australia called huntsman spiders.
Hmm.
If you ever seen the videos of like the ones that are like that big on the wall, those are huntsmans. We got some younger ones that were only about that big,
Hmm.
and there's different types of huntsmans, and one's called social huntsmans, where they literally their nest is just like hundreds of them, and they just are in a big ball in a tree somewhere. Just and they're so used to movement that they're way less likely to bite with movement. We're like, okay, those are the ones we're gonna get. So we kept these spiders on ice because the other thing is huntsman spiders will cross a room in like 2 seconds. They're mega fast. I think they're the fastest spiders I've ever seen. So we kept them on ice to like make their movements less fast, but they were still. So anyhow, we placed, like 6 or 7 on her, and she did 5 takes, hanging upside down with real like tarantula-sized spiders on her face and torso. And she was such a trooper. Like afterwards, I was like, what do you want to do? I'm sure her goals have changed in 9 years, but she was like, I would kill to like be in a reboot of like a female reboot of Cliffhanger or something. She's such a what's the word? Adrenaline junkie. So she was like, I was able to forget the fact that I fucking am horrified by Spider. Well, she was like, no, actually, I used it because I was genuinely screaming. But that was all real. There was zero CGI,
Oh,
and
wow.
I can't believe she did it. Sometimes you work with actors and they're like not willing. You're like, here's my line. Here's what I'm not willing to do. She never did that once. She was like, let's find a way to do it. And that's when you've got someone who's willing to play. That was the same with Levi. That was the same with Ed. Like when you're willing to just play, and if the director's like, can we just try this and see what happens? And they're all like, yes, yes, and right, improvising. They were. It's
You know what it
why their
reminds
performances
me
are so
of?
good. Yeah.
It reminds me of I'd interviewed Kelly Maroney on here about I'd say close to 10 years ago, and she was talking about a scene in Chopping Mall where she ends up with snakes crawling on her, and they were real snakes, Um, so it reminds me of that. Okay, that is interesting. I didn't know she was afraid of spiders, but boy,
Oh,
for somebody afraid of spiders, I mean, having those crawling up over her face and whatnot. Wow.
I almost, sometimes my rule as a director is if I'm going to ask you to do something horrifying, I will do the same thing. So I was like, I'll direct this scene with spiders on my face if that's helpful to you. And she was like, you don't have to do that. We need more on me.
Okay, that is cool. Well, let's talk about Zachary Levi because he is awesome in this movie, and um, I don't want to give anything away because his character's so clever, and
It's really hard to talk about this movie without giving anything away. So just to your listeners, just know this is probably more fun of an interview to listen to after you've watched the movie, just because I'm
yeah,
sure we've
folks,
spoiled
if you're
enough.
listening right now, folks, and you haven't seen, better watch out. This is your cue because we're going into
Here we go.
spoilers.
Yeah, I feel like you can't talk about his character without.
Yeah, we're going into spoilers. But folks, if you haven't seen Better Watch Out, check it out. This is your warning here at this part of the interview because we are going into spoilers.
Yes.
And I always appreciate when people warn me when it comes to spoilers.
It's
So
been 9 years. If you
it's
haven't
been
watched it
nine
yet,
years.
you'd better right now because we're about to start talking about it.
Yes, because of course the big folks, you've been warned. We're going into it now. Three, two, one. Okay. Zach, the big plot twist for
By
me.
the way, I always do this too. Zachary Levi is the adult in Shazam. Levi Miller is Luke.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And wow, it's interesting because he's obsessed with the babysitter, and this is something I can understand people being especially since she's drop dead gorgeous, but still, it's something I can't relate to because I was never into my babysitters, but I kind of get that. And of course, he is this obsessing, whereas I was kind of like the Ed in the movie. I was more interested in whatever it was Ed was doing. Ed did care less. He just wanted to hang out with his friend, unknowing that his friend was just using him. But Zach is so it's like he's playing Jack Torrance in Home Alone.
Mm, yeah.
If you put it that way. And when the plot twist happens, I'm like, holy shit. It's like they're really going there. And what a performance he gives, this whole I'm just a kid, so I'm harmless. But he's like, he comes on the surface, he looks like Gizmo, but inside he's like a gremlin.
Stripe. Yeah.
Yeah, he's Stripe. And boy, is he. And when he goes psychotic, he is excellent. Just
Yeah.
like he's he's not phased at any of the conflict he encounters. Like he encourages it. Talk about cast getting him in this movie and talk about him playing this part and
You
working with
know,
him.
I read over 200 boys for this role. And the problem that we kept coming across over and over again is I feel like with this character, Luke, I call this a motherfucker role because it's basically almost impossible. I needed a 12-year-old boy who could be funny, could be sexual, could be, like demented and frightening and chilling and just, it's a lot to ask for a child actor, right? And I just kept coming across this problem where none of the 12-year-old boys knew how to be sexual. They'd like fake it, but it just felt too innocent. And the thing that made Levi different was he was the male child photo model for J. Crew. And so you know how like in J. Crew ads or anything else, like you have to be kind of like mysterious and sexual a little bit. He had learned that from the still photography for those ads, like kind of how to like, have his like lips pouting and so on, just something that like 12-year-old boys don't think about. And so he was able to play like sexually intense where none of the other kids were able to do that. And so when I saw him, I mean, he was near the end. I want to say like I read over 200 kids and he was like, 199 or something. I knew that we'd found the right person if he wanted the role. And yeah, so it was just luck and tenacity and, usually you read 200 people for a role for Star Wars or some like $100 million movie. We just had to because, Zach Kahn and, with me doing some rewrites, we'd written a motherfucker role that was just a very near impossible role to fill.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if the movie would have worked if we hadn't have found Levi.
Probably not. And the stuff he comes up with, like here's what I found interesting. The and we'll go back to the sexuality part. Um, because I have mentioned earlier, when somebody's tied up, it's usually when I was growing up, it was a plot device. Whereas now you see it a lot of times it's for something sexual. In this movie, he's got her tied to a chair, but he's got her tied there because she can't go anywhere. Whereas where in another movie, if it was a more adult oriented movie, it would probably go to some dark places and real dark places. What's interesting here is he doesn't think about any other than the supposed cut where he's touching her, where he's
Which, by
doing
the
the
way, he
dare.
doesn't even think to do. It's a truth or dare
Yeah.
that he's given. So it's kind of childish even in nature when he does.
Like, and there's never, other than he kisses her forehead, he never attempts to kiss her or anything like that. But yet, we got to get to the Home Alone situation because this is where it balances from something that could be explicitly adult, her being tied to a chair, but he's not thinking about, you know, hot female tied to a chair. He's thinking about the zany things that,
I'll tell you the one sentence I told Levi at the beginning of making the movie. I said, "This is a movie about a boy with one possession, his best friend Garrett,
Mhm.
hoping to gain another possession, and he ends up losing both."
well,
And
let's
then
talk about the Home
because
Alone scene.
he's not being sexual with her because really the whole point of I'm in love with my babysitter. I want to kiss her. It was actually just wanting to have her. Um,
Okay, that makes sense. That makes sense. Well, we got to talk about the Home Alone scene because I'm going to
Hmm.
tell you something. I I haven't looked at these guys in a while, but there was a video guide online that I was in conflict a lot with because of their bullshit. They ranked. Now, I come from a Christian household, and I believe in the Bible and whatnot, you know. However, there's a lot of Christian movies that are just horrible, horrible. I did love The Passion of the Christ, mind you, but there's a lot of them are horrible. And there's an online uh, webpage called Movie Guide. I do not like them. You know, they give 4 stars to junk like Pearl Harbor, which immediately turned me on them. But they'll give 4 stars to shit like Fireproof, which awful movie. But I remember looking at their 1990 best of for families, and what film was landing on their list? Home Alone. And it's funny because I think about this a lot because when you look at say what was it, The Night Before with Seth Rogen and Jonathan Joseph Levitt there, there's a sequence that plays around with the Home Alone tactic, you know. There's also the movie Violent Night that came out with David Harbour, where you got some Home Alone antics taking place in it. And it takes place here. Now, Movie Guide is all about movies being uh, censored or whatnot for violence and sexuality and this and that. They're all for it when movies are violent. But I never, ever, 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 ever hear them make a comment when it comes to the influence, the bad influence of Home Alone.
Hmm.
And I've seen so many movies that take the Home Alone traps and use them in horror movies. And I'm like, not a peep out of them.
Hmm.
You know, oh, yes, let's attack natural born killers for being violent, even though it's an adult movie. Not a peep when it comes from a family film. Now, I like Home Alone. I thought the sequels were terrible, mind you. But I like Home Alone. Fine. You know, it's a fun little movie. But I remember watching Home Alone 2 when I used to live with my folks. And there was a scene where Macaulay Culkin's throwing bricks off the top of the house, and one of them just smacks one of the burglars right smack in the face. And my dad winced. He just winced. Now we're supposed to go, ha ha ha, that's so funny. Listen to the sound effects. It bonks him on his head. My dad winced because he knows that could kill a person.
Hmm.
And it's funny because you don't hear a movie guide talk about this. Oh no, no, this is a family-friendly movie with family morals. But I love it when a movie like yours
Hmm.
takes this to a whole new level. It says, well, you want to point fingers at natural born killers and movies like that about influence and violence. How about Home Alone? How that can influence violence? Because it certainly influences Zach's character Luke in this movie, doesn't it?
Hmm. Oh yeah. I mean,
By the way, thank you for that because it allows me to win my friggin' argument with them.
hmm, I the Home Alone influences. I mean, literally the spiders on the face came from that.
Oh,
Um,
that's right. Yeah, where the
yeah,
guy hits him in the face with a crowbar. I forgot about that. You're
yeah.
right. Never put that
There's a
together.
lot of references to Home Alone and Better Watch Out. It's not just the infamous scene. But yeah, that came from just, like again, Home Alone's actually another example of what we did with Better Watch Out, which is like it's it's semi lunatic of a kid to be setting up traps that could maim these robbers, but instead of, doing the cold, dark, let's look at the psychology of this child who would be willing to do this, it made it palatable by being funny and it's brightly lit. You notice, better watch out, we didn't shoot it like a horror movie. I made it very brightly lit. It's very colorful, lots of Christmas colors, because there's this weird juxtaposition that happens where when a movie looks inviting and terrible things happen, um, it's complicated and interesting. And I feel like Home Alone kind of does that. It does palatable, family-friendly violence. And no one ever questions it because it was, Chris Columbus always had the right tone.
And it's funny you mention that because when the first time before we ever see Olivia tied to the chair, and I thought you were so clever in doing this. You see like the camera kind of going from black to because she's opening her eyes, she's coming out of her haze, and you can hear in the background the cheerful Christmas music or whatnot, and you got Ed going around on his little bike thing there, or skateboard thing, and Zach just off, just doing his thing, and it's like, oh, all's good in the world, everything's bright except to her, it's like, oh my goodness, this is really happening,
Yeah.
I like the fact that you because like I said, I love it when people will attack R-rated movies. Movies shouldn't be R-rated. Oh no, everything should be kid friendly. But I loved it that, and I thank you so much for this. Allows me to win this argument where you take a family film and like, okay, let's play this. Let's see how family friendly this really is, And you did it so well here. And in Home Alone is even mentioned in the movie because they do like what is that show that they're referencing?
You want to hear something funny?
Yeah.
The lawyers said we could never say Home Alone. And I was like, what if we turn it into a verb? Where he goes, you're home aloneing him? And they said, that's allowed. So the only reference to the word I was only allowed to do because I turned it into a verb, which is funny because now that's something that a lot of like people have contacted me loving the movie. They're like, I love that he says, you're home aloneing her. So to future filmmakers, just know you can reference a movie uh, if you turn it into a verb.
Well, it's weird because they said the same thing in the night before, where the person that stole the marijuana from this guy, she throws like micro cars to stop him. He slips. He goes, "Oh, she home alone me." You know,
Yeah.
I don't understand that. Why you can't mention the name of a movie? I
You
don't
can
understand
if
that.
it's in its intended use. It's like you can use an iPhone in a movie as long as it's a good person calling another good person. As soon as it's a villain calling someone or a drug dealer doing a deal, something that, like Apple does not want to be associated with, they'll say absolutely not. So, we took this family-friendly movie and said, what if we actually took a way deeper look at some of these scenes? They would have said no, but they can't if you make it a verb. So that's kind of where that comes from. It's why you always see, cars with their, if it's like a bad guy, you'll never see the logo of the car. It'll always be covered up or turned into something else.
You see, I don't know. I don't get that. It's but nonetheless, I love the fact that you did that. Um, there was also another scene in the movie that shocked me. I mean, I thought I'd seen every plot twist, and then something else happens. I'm like, I didn't see this coming. I so didn't see this coming. A scene involving a shotgun.
I mean, like
And
I
I
said,
can't believe you went there.
he starts with one possession, trying to get another, and ends up losing both.
Oh my goodness, I can't believe. And every time I see that scene, I'm like, oh no, 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 and I'm kind of like this when I see that, because it's like I'm glad you went there because you dared enough as a filmmaker to do it. You didn't take it with kid gloves, but it was like, oh my goodness, because in many ways, this character isn't innocent.
Yeah.
And even Olivia brings out a lot of the deception. And I think this kid was just probably
He's
some
kind of
good,
weirdly like the window, like the emotional window into the movie is at some point I start going, I think we're watching this movie through Garrett's eyes in part.
yeah.
So,
Well, it's funny because Garrett's this plays this nerdy kid. He doesn't care about the babysitter. I mean, sure, she's beautiful, but it's like he's just interested in the video games and,
yeah,
basically the stuff I was into at that age. He's kind of many ways represents what I was like to be babysat, you know? And he just kind of goes because in many ways I can relate to that because I had a hard time with friends growing up. And a lot of times when you have a hard time with friends, you end up compromising yourself to fit in, and you end up with people using you, but yet you allow it, you supplement it because, well, this person is letting me be their friend, even though they're not being your friend. There's something about that I found so real, and I felt so bad for this kid. And I was like, oh my goodness, I can't believe it went there. And it's such a painful part of the movie, but I'm glad you went there because it really drills home what's going on here,
yeah.
you know?
My
And
editor did the most evil thing. It was such a simple move, and she's just absolutely dark and demented for this because he has a line. His last line is, I want my mom," and she was like, "Let's cut off that last M," so he doesn't even finish that word. And so if you watch, he's in the middle of saying "ma" when the shot happens. I was like, that is, oh. Jules was my editor. Her name was Jules DeRuvo, and that was an absolutely demented move.
talk about, talk about, it's Ed Oxenberg is the actor, right?
Ed Oxenbould, yeah.
Oxenbolt. Okay, sorry, I got that wrong. I really liked him in The Visit, and I think he even supercharges it here. I really liked him because you get the feeling he's a good kid who probably didn't fit in, who is getting used, and he probably knows he's getting used, but it's kind of like, yeah, but it's he doesn't have any confidence.
Right. You
Yeah,
you don't have a strong no. He's
yeah.
he's he's the kid before you learn to say no.
And talk about working with him and talk about the scene. What was his reaction to doing that scene with the shotgun?
Oh, I mean, Ed Ed was another one who actually of all three of them, he would improvise the most. He would go off script sometimes. He's very, very, very clever with improvising. So I kind of let him, you know, my rule is if you're going to bring passion and interest and things that I wasn't, the worst a movie can ever turn out is what's in my head. I
Hmm.
try to surround myself with people who are going to come up with better shots as a cinematographer or better moments as an actor or better lighting than what I was expecting or the composing and so on. Because I'm pretty good at all these things, but I like to surround myself with people who are way better. So I'm constantly, I'm not one of those directors who's like, don't challenge me. I will take getting challenged by the PA if they come up with the best idea. So Ed was absolutely bringing just heart and warmth and humor just when it was needed. He always had a sense of like when to be funny, when to be serious. And he really loved the shotgun scene because his character gets thrown across the room. So that was a wire stunt, and he loved being covered in blood. It's like how often do you get to play a dying scene as a 12-year-old boy?
I like that you went there. And I like the fact that it got a reaction out of me too, because there's so many times, growing up, you watch Westerns, it was all bang bang. I remember Wes Craven said, when he did Last House on the Left, he said it was his answer to Vietnam,
Mm,
He'd see Westerns and it was all bang bang, you're dead. Or you watch Star Wars and you'd see a half a dozen stormtroopers mowed down. I like the fact that Austin Powers in one of its deleted scenes showed this guy, holding his hand and go, no, and you get the steamroller way back there.
right.
One of the cut scenes is shows him in the background of the flashback of him with his family. And I think what Jay Roach was getting at there is you never think about this stuff when these mindless thugs are just mowed down, you don't
Right.
think about it. I like the fact in this movie, because no other movie would have done this. Well, at least most other movies would not have done this. And and there you got this kid that gets blown away with a shotgun. And it's like you went there, but it got an emotional reaction out of me and likely anybody else that sees it,
Yeah.
because you care, you're invested.
Yeah.
You made that work.
Something Levi brought to that scene was I I thought it was too much. I basically after he shoots him, I was gonna have him throw the shotgun off, walk out of frame, and you see his shadow as he's having an absolute fucking fit in the other room, like screaming into pillows and throwing shit around, and Levi was like, I want to try to do that on camera. And I was like, dude, it's a really intense moment. I feel like we need a break from it, but you know what? Let's try it. And again, this is
He
like
brought it.
I think it's his best scene. Because
Oh yeah.
I don't know if you notice, well, like in the middle of he starts like full crying, and he did that every time. Like he's just, oh my God, he's so good. So yeah, this idea of like, is it anger? Has he has he just is he crying because he's lost his best friend? Like it's very ambiguous what he's feeling
But yeah,
in
he's
such an
blaming
intense
him
moment.
for making him do it.
He's blaming him. In fact, he
Yeah.
keeps screaming, "Fuck you!"
Yeah. And
And
you see Olivia, like she's still tied to the chair, and she's like, now she's really
she's
got
numb.
to think because now
Yeah,
the one because she was trying to reach Ed,
yeah.
and now that channel's
You,
gone.
you know why that rampage afterwards works is something I always wanted, something I was very cognizant of while making the movie was anytime Levi's character did something really horrific, I needed to immediately follow it up with something very childish. So, like there's a scene where he's like holding a gun up to the boyfriend's eye, and then basically to get out of the situation, the boyfriend pisses himself. And it was one of my favorite reactions where Levi just goes, "Stop it!" And he like goes and gets like yellow rubber gloves and so on, and he's just kind of being a 12-year-old boy who's having to deal with someone's just pissed the floor. Or even, when Olivia gets knocked down the stairs, and the next scene is her opening her eyes, and we're watching them triking around saying "kill, fuck, Mary" with oh God, what was the cartoon? I've forgotten. Adventure Time characters. It's like a really childish thing. So Levi was right. It's like he throws a 12-year-old boy's tantrum after shooting his friend in the face. And it's I think it's more disturbing when these really horrifying things happen, and then you immediately get like reminded he's 12. And that's what makes it so disturbing. It's same with the paint can scene. He like the direction I gave him was like, once you come down the stairs, I want you to act like it's Christmas morning, and you can't, you can't wait to like
That
open your
was
presents.
perfect.
Because you remember how like delighted he looked as he was coming down the
Yeah.
stairs. It's you've been sleeping upstairs and you're coming down and it's Christmas morning. And so to me, like it's what makes it more disturbing is that juxtaposition between the movie looks friendly, this child is having very childish reactions, and yet the behavior is horrific.
And you had another funny scene too, where of course it involved a pencil in the face to this guy,
Hmm.
right through the mouth. And there's a scene where he's trying to set it up so that this guy was smoking marijuana, and he just starts laughing whenever the it starts coming out of the wound. That was actually kind of funny, I got to admit, you know.
Thank you.
I don't the name of the actor, Alex Mike, who played
Oh,
Ricky?
Alex Mikic.
Okay, it's I never seen an even the first and last name, I'd never seen that before. He was
Yeah,
really good in the movie.
yeah. He has not had the like to me, he's one of those actors who like he's immensely talented. Um, he hasn't had his like moment yet as an actor, but I keep telling him I'm like keep going because you're really good. And sometimes it takes a while for people to recognize you. Sometimes like even with Levi, like I feel like directing him, I was like this is like what Leonardo DiCaprio was in
Yeah.
What's Eating Gilbert Grape. Like he is as talented as Leonardo DiCaprio, but then he's been in all these huge, massive $100 million movies that have all bombed, and so he hasn't had his like real moment yet. And I know he will, and it's just very fun knowing that even from 10 years ago when he had just turned 13 when we started shooting. So I really believe very strongly that everyone in this movie will have, Dacre Montgomery, who plays the ex-boyfriend, he
Yeah, we're gonna
I
get
was
to him.
predicting he
Yeah.
was gonna blow up. I did not know it was gonna happen like less than a year after the movie came out. So
I thought his scene too with the outside. Again, Luke just takes control, makes
yeah,
he makes this guy write this apology letter out to Olivia, and it's like, oh my goodness. And and Luke's totally controlling it. And I thought the reactions of Montgomery was hilarious.
yeah.
Like he's supposed to be this guy you think could handle this, and he really can't.
Well, he comes in at the low point, right? And so while discussing his character, I remember saying like, listen, Olivia has just tried to escape. She has failed. It's already a very dark movie. It's a very dark moment when we introduce your character. And I was like, I know this is gonna sound crazy, but I think we need to play it for comedy. It's like an injection of new energy into the movie. And he knew he just immediately got the right tone to play because it's at the moment where we're most fearful of Luke, and here's this big jock just kind of like treating him like a fucking 4 year old, and you can see Luke like hating him, and we're afraid for Dacre, and yet he doesn't know. He's kind of like this oblivious oaf, and it was so. Dacre did such an amazing job with that role.
Talk about setting up the kill scene there with the
Well,
woman.
so technically, I think we were his first feature film, but he had already been cast in Power Rangers.
Hmm.
And so he was about to be the lead, the Red Power Ranger in a $150 million movie. And so he was told by his reps, they were like, you're not allowed to do any stunts. And one of those stipulations was his feet were never allowed to leave the ground. And I was like, we're hanging him. How do we do this? And so I kind of like re-storyboarded the whole scene. And if you notice, that's why in that hanging scene, there's so many close-ups, right? Like his face, his feet trying to get onto the swing to stand on it, all these close-ups and details, which end up making the scene really tactile and tense. But what it really was I was not allowed to let him leave the ground.
Brilliant. You have me. Yeah.
So that
Oh,
that
I
that one kind of came out of sometimes something gets better because of limitations. I think that was an example. I think the scene ended up being better because we had that limitation that forced us to be creative.
well, I like the fact that you were able to do that, and I hear stories like that a lot where people take a limitation, they pull it off. Two other people we got to discuss. Speaking of humor, you had the parents, Patrick Warburton, Madsen. Patrick Warburton, I think he is so, so funny in anything he
Yeah.
does.
He,
In the
I just
voice of,
texted him yesterday. He's been very just such a wonderful soul, and he's always saying like, "When are we working together again?" He's just absolutely lovely. We used to go to the same gym in Hollywood, and like I didn't know that at the time, but I was lifting it at some point. I hear Peckover, and I turn, and it's Patrick Warburton. He's like, "I need you to spot me." So I walked over, and the motherfucker had four plates on each side. He is he is so much stronger than you would guess. And
oh,
so I
wow.
was spotting Patrick Warburton at the gym and completely casual about it while my friends were like, "What is going on?" It was fun.
I think
Yeah,
he is so funny.
he's wonderful. He's very funny, and there's a scene that got cut out of the movie because Act One was taking too long, and I'm so sad because it was actually a really dramatic scene between him and Luke when they go outside to take the trash out,
Hmm.
and I just remember like it took about like 8 or 9 takes. We were trying to find it, and Patrick is such a great comedian. He always gets hired for his comedy, and it was really fun. Kind of like every time we did the scene, he got like more and more dramatic with it. And by the end of that scene, he like patted me on the back and he was like, "Thank you. I haven't gotten to do something like that in a long time." And so it kind of makes me want to like hire him for the next one and like there be
Well,
zero comedy.
do an uncut version of this.
I mean, uh,
You
at
can
least the deleted scenes.
do an extended cut on this. I mean,
Mm,
like they sell, they do
yeah.
sell.
You want to hear something funny?
Uh,
If I were to release my director's cut, it would be exactly what the movie was. I like, I think it's better exactly the way it is. Obviously it's fun to see deleted scenes, but I
okay,
don't know. I
okay,
don't know if I would say like, oh, I got, forced to cut. It's like it's what the movie needed to be. So
okay. No, no, the point taken.
yeah,
But yeah, he and Virginia Madsen, and him coming out there with the ornaments, and she's like, "Really, you're gonna wear that tie or whatever?"
yeah.
Like, um,
They had when Virginia heard that Patrick was playing the dad, she was like, "I'm in. I've been wanting to act with him for decades." And they went so off script. That whole Christmas ornaments scene, those were Patrick Warburton's actual ornaments. He was like, I don't know when it started happening or at what point, but people started sending me gay Christmas ornaments. So like really campy things or like gay icons like Dorothy or whatever. And so he has like ruby slippers as ornaments and so on. And so he was like, he came up with this idea before he came to Australia. He's like, can I bring this box of ornaments that I have? I was like, of course. And he arrived on set and we had this, what was supposed to be a fairly short scene. And he and Virginia like came up with this crazy, it almost feels like out of place for the movie, and yet it sets up a lot of things thematically that I think were really smart. And they had so much fun. They were giggling between takes and
oh, I bet.
saying, I can't believe we're allowed to do this scene."
Virginia Madsen, fantastic actors, and Patrick Warburton. Like, I think I first discovered him when he was the voice of the wolf in Hoodwinked.
Yeah.
And
He has a
I've
great
interviewed,
voice.
oh yeah, and Kronk and Emperor's New Groove. But he's also in movies like Ted, and stuff
Yeah.
like that. And I interviewed the director of of Hoodwinked, and we talked a lot. That movie was very clever. But we talked about Patrick Warburton because he's got that voice. You hear him in Family Guy,
Yeah,
and you know, he's just got that voice, and he makes it work for him. But
yeah.
yeah,
He's a delight. I can't wait to work with him again. He's such a funny, warm, talented person.
you know what? I think he's terrific. Anytime he shows up in a movie, it's like, okay, we got something here.
Yeah.
I thought the ending of this movie was, I like what you did with it, involving the middle finger. I think it was perfect the way you went with it. And, I gotta say, number one, it also shows how quick on his feet Luke has to be in a Pacific moment, especially balancing a pencil. But I gotta say this too, like, and I've wondered this myself, but I'm gonna ask you right here. Any shot that there'd be a sequel to this?
I have a sequel planned. The problem is, better watch out because it didn't go theatrical and because all the streamers pay nothing. We only broke even like 2 years ago. And so financially, um, I don't know if anyone would finance a sequel to this, just like pure producers putting in their, spreadsheets to figure out profits and so on, unless either Levi or Liv blows up in a way where they're like a household name star, right? I have written an outline for a sequel that doesn't require them to be kids anymore. It can happen as adults.
I know, I know,
And
because
I can't wait for if one of them blows up. They both deserve to blow up because of how talented they are. But if that happens, I will absolutely say, all right, here's the idea. If Better Watch Out is a subversion of the home invasion genre, I do have a sequel that is a subversion of the campus stalker genre.
nice. I like the fact you go different.
hmm
I
And
hope
it
you get to
is,
make it.
oh, I hope so. It's so, it, given what happened in Better Watch Out, I'll just say it now. I'm going to play the audience again because they're going to think they know what's going on, and it's going to take a wildly different turn than what you're expecting. And of course, it'll be called Better Not Cry.
Oh, wow. You see, I hope you get to make this. Like, I'm going to give you an example. David Fincher made The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, the American version, and I loved it. Rooney Mara got an Oscar nomination. She was so deserving. I love David Fincher's work, and The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, no different. Loved it. But then there was no follow-up. It's like there's two other books at the time. Can they not bring Fincher in? Can they not make this work? And I guess it was because, Daniel Craig was now doing the Bond films and this and that. And I'm like, so when the girl in the spider web came out, it's like the interest wasn't there
Yeah, it missed the
because,
mark.
yeah. And because when Fincher's name is on something, it's like visually, I have an idea what I'm anticipating. And, and he rarely ever disappoints, if ever. So I hate to see this get to the point where it's too late.
There's no two. So this, I was very clever about this. This is a sequel that can happen at any age.
Are you going to bring Zachariah and Olivia back?
Oh, Levi and Liv will both. be in the movie. I wish I could use Ed, but he is a corpse right now. So
Well, you're not good. Well, come on. Look, Jason Voorhees can come back.
right. In fact, I have like this would involve Luke's parents, so Virginia and Patrick would both be back in it. I don't want to give too much away, but
Mhm.
everyone who came out of the first movie alive will have a fun, different role to play.
Well, I hope you get to, I seriously hope you get to make that movie, you
Thank you.
know? Yeah, you're saying there's a plot twist. Let me guess. Luke's going to get the score with Liv.
I can neither confirm nor deny.
Oh my goodness. Wow. I would like to see the sequel made, like like I was happy to highlight this film on here tonight, this was like I said, it's on my horror, like I do the 12 days of Christmas, but you got up to the 24th, so I got
Uh,
12 Christmas movies, and I've got 12 Christmas horror movies, and this is on that list. I really enjoy this, and I really was honored to have you come on here because I love a lot of the choices you make in this film, The fact that you got me emotionally involved and even got me thinking about even my own life, how I was related more to I was more like a kid
Garrett.
like Ed,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
Garrett growing up, you know. Like today you hear about uh people and their sex fantasies about babysitters and stuff like that.
Mm.
And I'm like, I never had that. And I don't know whether it's today's generation just because of the internet or whatnot. I grew up more like Garrett than I did Luke, you know. It's funny because back when I was Luke's age, I probably wouldn't have even noticed uh Olivia, whether she was hot or not, because I was
I think
into
most 12-year-olds wouldn't. When I was
yeah.
casting, I was shocked because I was like, I thought a lot of 12-year-olds were sexual by now, and none of them were.
I wasn't even at that age. Like I've told this story before. The first time I ever seen a naked woman, I think I was in junior high, and my cousins had baited me into watching Friday the 13th Part 2.
There we go.
And yeah, and you had Kristen Baker do nude skinny dipping in it.
I was about to say the pool scene. Right.
And I was like, that was the first time it ever dawned on me that men and women look different underneath the clothes. And that was the moment my mom came in and turned the television off. It's like
Mm.
it was like three kills up until that point, and that was what got the television turned off. But of course, it was a rental, so my cousins managed to sneak it back on. But that was the first time I recall ever seeing a naked woman, and that was junior high. And even then, I was kind of like, am I supposed to be watching this? I was more repulsed at that age than I was sexually driven because I was like, oh, my parents don't want me watching this, blah, blah,
Right.
blah, blah, blah. Like we had to like make sure nobody's around. There was profanity in movies. So, and I look at Garrett and I'm like, I'm seeing kind of like that out of him. So, so I I was a late bloomer when it come to noticing females. It wasn't until high school, that kind of kicked in for me. But I guess maybe at that age, I was thinking like I've got collect. It's funny today. I was talking to a friend of mine that you go into Toys R Us and whatnot, you see more adults than kids because adults are collectors now. I have got a bunch of the new origin releases of Masters of the Universe. still in their packages, whatnot. And but they released them so you have better articulation and stuff. And it was like when I saw those in Toys R Us, I was like, oh my goodness, this is just nostalgia just
Hmm.
washing over me, you know. I got a bunch of those LJN wrestling rubber figures that I have. I get them at the conventions, and it just takes me back to that Garrett age, you know. Whereas somebody like, say, Luke might have pictures of naked women on his wall.
Right.
Yeah. And it's not that I don't notice beautiful women. Like my big crush right now is Emma Stone. Emma Stone's my crush in movies, but Emma Stone does not necessarily have to be a sexual thing. Emma Stone's just amazing in everything she does, you know, because you can only be hot so long and it wears off, you know. You got to be interesting. So, so I don't know, but there was a lot of stuff that was going through my head as I was watching this movie. So while we're waiting for Better Watch Out 2, do you have any other film projects that you are working on that you're able to talk about?
I can't go into details, but I will say I sold my first studio pitch this year, and I'm writing hmm, an animal attack thriller that will be a studio movie, and it is with a really talented big producer, and I'm feeling happy because it's been 9 years since I've been behind the camera. I've had three studio movies fall apart on me. You mentioned Christopher Landon. I met him at a Christmas party, probably the year after Better Watch Out came out, and we just talked because there's not that many horror comedy filmmakers out there. And it was nice, and he was lovely, but then I didn't see him again. And then I got this email out of the blue from him in 2021. It was like, hey, I have a $20 million movie set up at Universal. I'm not going to be able to direct it anymore for, I think he was about to have another kid. And he was like, I've already spoken to Jason Blum. I've already spoken to the executives at Universal. Everyone agrees that of all the like new generation of horror filmmakers, you will be able to pull off my tone the best. And so he was like, there's no obligation, but here's the script. If you want it, it's yours. And it was such a fun movie. It was so good. And but it was another one that starred seniors. And when you're at the $20 million range, it eventually died because it was the pandemic, and Universal was like, how can we make a $20 million movie starring teenagers? Like, there's no room for stars in this. And so they killed it just because of the age of the characters, which was so sad because it was like a modern twist on Invasion of the Body Snatchers, and it was so good.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I hope we can reignite that again. But like I said, I've had three studio movies fall apart on me. So this one that I sold this year it seems to be getting fast tracked. Like things, usually a deal takes 4 to 8 months. Once they've said they want to buy it to when it actually gets signed, just because lawyers on lawyers are always trying to nitpick and so on. And from the day I pitched to the day that I signed the deal was 13 days, and no one I know has ever heard of it happening that fast. And this producer's been when I turn in a draft or pages, he gets back to me within 48 hours every time, which is also unheard of. So partly he's a hardworking motherfucker who is really smart and talented. I also think they they want to make this. So that's where I am right now. I'm very, very excited. So Better Not Cry will not be my next movie, very likely.
Oh, wow. Well, I wish you the luck with that. I hope that you get to make it. Um, look at the silver lining. This film is definitely wrapping some attention. So the fact that I'm on here talking to you about it tonight
9 years
and
later.
going,
I
huh?
know. 9 years later.
9 years later, but
Yeah.
better late than never, they say,
No, what I mean is like the fact that I'm still getting to talk about this movie because people want to talk about it 9 years later
Mhm.
is doesn't happen very often for low budget movies. So I'm very, like I said, it's pretty surreal.
Yeah, I definitely wanted to highlight this. So I was happy to have you come on here tonight and talk about this. And I really do hope you get to do the sequel. I
Hmm.
like this, especially the way the twists and turns and shocks you throw into this. I hope you never lose that, because you have no idea how many movies I see that you just know where it's going and there's no surprise. And you know, whereas with uh whereas with this, it went several different places. I was a little shocked it went into.
Yeah.
So so yeah. Is there anybody else from this movie that you think would come on this show to promote this further?
I don't know. I mean, you can reach out to them. They're all on Twitter and Instagram and so on. Um, yeah, I'm not sure. I would have to ask them.
I would love to have. I don't know how many of them would be whether they want to come on here or not, but I mean like uh I don't know whether Olivia's unreachable. Zach would be a really uh interesting one to have on here. Uh Patrick might be too big, but the stuff I could talk to him about.
Yeah. I'll
Yeah.
say this. I've kept in touch with everybody and I'm also very thankful. They're all very proud of the movie and feel like they did something special and rare with it. So I'm sure they'd be happy to talk about the movie.
Well, you know what? I really enjoyed this is the Blu-ray DVD combo uh release. I'm really glad you made this, you
Me
know?
too.
And I'm really glad it's starting to pick up. Like I was at my brother's before I came here to do this interview, and we're watching like these top 10 videos on Christmas horror films. This lands on a lot of lists. So it's certainly on my list to watch every year. So I'm
It's
really
great.
glad you got to make this, and what a trooper everybody was,
Yeah.
especially Olivia and the spiders.
Yeah. Just
I mean,
everyone.
yeah. This
Levi went there. If I were to say where the most guiding happened was he was trying to be grounded with his character, and I kept pushing him to go a little further, a little more crazy, which was not as because he's a very naturalistic actor.
Mhm.
But I was like, if we play this too dour and too seriously, it gets into that ick territory of like a 12-year-old being sexual with a 17-year-old girl. But when he's this larger than life character, suddenly it's like strangely palatable. And I thought that was important. His huge ew, those reactions, you kind of need it to
Hmm.
to go through this topic and for it to weirdly be entertaining. Like there's this incredibly misogynistic character being really awful, and yet the movie's fun. And that's because he's a little over the top, little
Absolutely.
campy. So,
Did you what was the premiere like for this film? You
oh
said
my
there was a
God.
couple.
Yeah, we premiered at Fantastic Fest in Austin,
Mhm.
and it was again, and it was opening night. And what was also playing opening night was Arrival. No, not just Arrival. Arrival and The Handmaiden, that Korean movie. Both like, I want to say The Handmaiden was directed by the guy who did, oh my God, Old Boy. So the
Okay.
director of Old Boy, Arrival, and this random movie that no one had heard anything about, and we didn't even have a poster. We just had like a still from the movie, no trailer or anything. And so almost everyone who got into Better Watch Out opening night did because they didn't get into the other two movies. And
You want
so
me to
everyone
tell you
was
something? You
what?
want me to tell you something?
What?
I've heard of those other two movies, haven't seen them.
They're both great. They're both great
Don't matter.
movies,
It don't
but
matter.
that
I've
that
seen
opening night,
this. I
I th
own this. If
yeah,
I have my choice of the three, I'm going to this.
that's very kind of you. The the
And I'm
the
being truthful on that
yeah,
because
the
those,
premiere was so shocking because I kind of knew we were just the fallback movie of opening night.
Mhm.
But Fantastic Fest knew what they were doing because I want to say there were four ovations over the course of the movie, and two of them were in the last 2 minutes. There's that. It's very
Mhm.
important when a movie like ends, like just sticks the landing, because so many movies are really entertaining and fun, and they just kind of like fall apart at the end. And I think endings like it's very hard to pull off a good ending. And thank God we finished strong. In fact, there was a standing ovation just a minute earlier before that moment where you hear the cop in the background go, "This one's still alive," and everyone just like jumped up roaring, and I just remember crying and being like, "Oh my God, I have to do a Q&A in like 90 seconds," and I was just sobbing because it was really loud and everyone was clapping, and then they sit down, and then when that happens, they start clapping again. I was like, it was one of the best nights of my life.
Well, those other two movies, they may be great. I know we get Arrival here, but I didn't see it.
You got to go watch Arrival and The Handmaiden. They're both excellent.
Yeah, but
Very different movies. You know, we're
but
on a horror
look on the
podcast,
bright
so
side.
yeah.
Look on the bright side. I picked this first,
There we go.
so
Thank you.
I got this on Blu-ray. So I'd love to see it screened. Maybe one of these trips to Toronto, I might get lucky there.
Yeah.
Um, but love to see it on the big screen. But I love what you did with it, and I'd like to see you do more stuff. And I would encourage you to keep on that whole not just shocking twist, but really shocking twist, you
Just
know.
so I can't help it. Everything I do is
I
always going to be
love
very
that.
subversive. Yeah.
I love it, you know. So yeah, this movie turned out. I would encourage people, especially if you're into Christmas horror films, check out Better Watch Out. Yes, you know, and have yourself a great time with it. Uh you'll never look at Home Alone the same again.
I'll also say this, if you've never seen it before, know that the first viewing is very different from the second viewing. And one of my goals with this was my favorite movies in the world are ones where you rewatch them with friends who have never seen it before and kind of like live vicariously through their reactions. And this is a very fun movie to be there with friends who have never seen before, watching them discover things for the first time.
There you go. There you
Yeah.
go. Well, hopefully we'll get better, better not cry or better don't
Mm.
cry.
Yeah.
Uh, I hope we get that, you know, and have more adventures of Luke and Lee,
Luke and
Olivia,
Ashley. Yeah.
like Ashley, yeah, have more adventures of them. So yeah, yeah. I meant to ask because you're from Australia. And I've interviewed a few people, but I've never been to Australia. I've only
Mm.
been to the States once, and that was to go to Chiller, New Jersey. But um, I've interviewed a few people, including Little Nell from the Rocky Horror Picture Show. She's in
Mm.
Australia. Had her on the Zoom, and you could hear the animals in the back. But I often ask about the wildlife in Australia because you guys have got, and I hear this a lot. People say we never see any of the dangerous animals, like the taipan snake. I heard is in like in Queensland, very unpopulated area, but it's one of the deadliest snakes on the planet. Well, you get the box jellyfish there, the saltwater crocodile, the cassowary. You got so many of these deadly creatures. Did you ever see any of these animals in Australia?
No, because I was in Sydney proper and they tend to steer clear of the cities.
You didn't even get to box with a kangaroo.
Nothing.
I had a guy on here from Australia. I think it was last weekend. He's been on here a few times, and I asked him, I said, "Have you got to box with a kangaroo yet?" And he said, "No, but the night's still young."
Right. I've had a pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much for having me on here.
You know what? I had a pleasure talking to you too. And when you get your next project off the ground and whatnot, I would love to have you come back on, because this was a great deep dive into this movie. And yeah, this will be on my Christmas watch list this year, and hopefully other people will watch it too. And I love that poster behind you too, Yeah, that's a great poster for the film. You got the
It
other one
it
where she's tied, bound and gagged to the chair, and you get the Christmas lights all wrapped around her from that shot from the movie. That's a great poster, but I really like this one because you get the tree behind them. It's almost like they're concealed. They're trying to conceal themselves, but
well, it's also setting up expectations that don't pan out. Yeah.
I love that. So I really like that poster, and I really enjoy the movie. So yeah,
Thank you.
better watch out. Chris, before I let you go, would you mind doing a plug for my show?
Sure.
Yeah, just state your name and say you're listening to Greg Gilbert on Python's Paradise. Now, when you state your name, say you're the director of Better Watch Out as well.
Okay.
Say you're listening to Greg Gilbert on Python's Paradise.
All right. This is Chris Peckover, writer and director of Better Watch Out, and you're listening to Greg Gilbert's Python's Paradise.
Absolutely, absolutely. Wonderful having you on here. And speaking of Christmas, it's a little over a month away. I wish you a Merry Christmas, and I hope your new projects get off the ground. And the sequel to this, I'm glad. I like the answer you gave. I'm glad that you got something in mind. So,
I'm okay letting people wait. It'll be worth the wait if we get to make it.
you know what? Sometimes you get movies that are rushed too quickly. That's why you get disappointing sequels a lot of times,
Hmm.
They rush it. Sometimes, you gotta let it wait a little bit, and then it's like, you got something great,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So absolutely. God bless you. You have yourself a wonderful night, and thank you for coming on and blessing my show with your presence.
Absolutely. All right. We'll
Absolutely.
talk soon.
Absolutely. Take care, man.
All right. Take care.
Bye-bye.